Hey, didn't see you there. I was caught up in a book. Tuck Everlasting. What a roller coaster we were on with the last couple of chapters. But let's keep this thing chugging along, because here we are with Chapter 20. Let's take a look under the hood, you wild hooligans. Chapter 20. Winnie was standing with her cheek pressed into Tuck's chest, her arms flung tight around him. She trembled and kept her eyes squeezed shut. She could feel Tuck's breath come and go in little gasps. It was very quiet. The Tree Gap constable knelt over the sprawled body of the man in the yellow suit, and then he said, "He ain't dead. Leastwise, not yet." Winnie opened her eyes a crack. She could see the shotgun lying on the grass where Mae had dropped it. She could see Mae's hands, too, hanging limp, clenching, then hanging limp again. The sun was scorching hot, and near her ear a gnat whined. The constable stood up. "What did you hit him for?" He wheezed resentfully. "He was taking the child away," said Mae. Her voice was dull and exhausted. "He was taking the child against her will." At this the constable exploded. "Bing! Dang it, woman! What you trying to say? Taking that child against her will? That's what you done! You kidnapped that child!" Winnie let go of Tuck's waist and turned around. Her trembling had stopped. "They didn't kidnap me," she said. "I came because I wanted to." Tuck drew his breath in sharply. "You wanted to?" echoed the constable, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You wanted to?" "That's right," said Winnie unflinchingly. "They're my friends." The constable stared at her. He scratched his chin, eyebrows high, and eased his shotgun to the ground. Then he shrugged and looked down at the man in the yellow suit, who lay motionless on the grass. The blazing sun white on his face and hands. His eyes were closed now, but except for that, he looked more than ever like a marionette flung carelessly into a corner, arms and legs every which way, midst tangled strings. The one glance she gave him fixed his appearance forever in Winnie's mind. She turned her eyes away quickly, looking to Tuck for relief. But Tuck was not looking back at her. Instead, he was gazing at the body on the ground, leaning forward slightly, his brows drawn down, his mouth a little open. It was as if he were entranced and, yes, envious, like a starving man looking through a window at a banquet. Winnie could not bear to see him like that. She reached out a hand and touched him, and it broke the spell. He blinked and took her hand, squeezing it. "Well, anyway," said the constable at last, turning businesslike, "I got to take charge here. Get this feller into the house before he fries. I'm telling you now, if he don't make it, you're in a pickle, you people. Now here's what we'll do. You," he said, pointing at Mae, "you got to come with me, you and the little girl. You got to be locked up right away, and the little girl, I got to get her home. The rest of you, you stay here with him. Look after him. I'll get back with the doctor quick as I can. Should have brought a deputy, but I didn't expect nothing like this to happen. Well, now it's too late. All right, let's get moving." Miles said softly, "Ma, we'll get you out right away." "Sure, Ma," said Jessie. "Don't worry about me none," said Mae in the same exhausted voice. "I'll make out." "Make out!" exclaimed the constable. "You people beat all. If this feller dies, you'll get the gallows. That's what you'll get, if that's what you mean by make out." Tuck's face crumpled. "The gallows," he whispered. "Hanging?" "That's it," said the constable. "That's the law. Now let's get going." Miles and Jessie lifted the man in the yellow suit and carried him carefully into the house. But Tuck stood staring, and Winnie could guess what he was thinking. The constable swung her up onto his horse and directed Mae to her own saddle, but Winnie kept her eyes on Tuck. His face was very pale, the creases deeper than ever, and his eyes looked blank and sunken. She heard him whisper again, "The gallows." And then Winnie said something she never said before, but the words were words she had sometimes heard and often longed to hear. They sounded strange on her own lips and made her sit up straighter. "Mr. Tuck," she said, "don't worry. Everything's going to be all right." The constable glanced heavenward and shook his head. Then, clutching his shotgun, he climbed up behind Winnie and turned the horse toward the path. "You first," he barked at Mae. "I gotta keep an eye on you. And as for you," he added grimly, speaking to Tuck, "you better hope that feller don't die on you. I'll be back soon as I can." "Everything will be all right," Tuck repeated slowly. Mae slumped on the back of the fat old horse, did not respond, but Winnie leaned round the constable and looked back at Tuck. "You'll see," she said, and then she faced forward, sitting very straight. She was going home, but the thought of that was far from her mind. She watched the rump of the horse ahead, the swish of coarse, dusty hairs as he moved his tail, and she watched the swaying, sagging back of the woman who rode him. Up through the dim pine trees they went, the constable's breath wheezing in her ears, and emerging from the coolness and the green, Winnie saw again the wide world spread before her, shimmering with light and possibility. But the possibilities were different now. They did not point to what might happen to her, but to what she herself might keep from happening. The only thing she could think of was the clear and terrible necessity. Mae Tuck must never go to the gallows. Whatever happened to the man in the yellow suit, Mae Tuck must not be hanged. Because if all they had said was true, then Mae, even if she were the cruelest of murderers and deserved to be put to death, Mae Tuck would not be able to die. Okay, that's the end of chapter 20. Let's look back really fast at some thoughts we have. So it starts off, Winnie is afraid, she's scared. Whack! This guy's just been whacked on the head, and now she's freaking out. She's scared, and Tuck is nervous, and Jessie and Miles, they're sort of off to the side, I guess. But the constable, this is key, I think. The constable stood up. "What did you hit him for?" he wheezed resentfully. He resents this. He doesn't say he's not mad at Mae. He's not angry at her. He's not, "Stick him up, you criminal, I hate you." He's saying, "Why'd you have to do that?" He's upset. He's more upset that this guy was whacked on the head. It's because this constable, yes, he's the sheriff. Yes, he's the law enforcement, but he doesn't want to have all this violence. He doesn't want all these complications to happen. He doesn't want this going on. He didn't plan for this. He even says, "I didn't think anything like this would happen." "They didn't kidnap me," says Winnie. "I came because I wanted to." That's key. Winnie wanted to go with these people. She wanted to go with them. And even if she wasn't sure if she wanted to go with them, she's sticking up for them now because these are her friends. She says, "They're my friends." The Tucks are her friends. She's known them for a day and a half, and they're her best friends. She's friends with these people. She doesn't hate them. She doesn't feel kidnapped. She doesn't feel like a hostage. They were even taking her back. They said just earlier, or just a chapter or two ago, they said, "We gotta get Winnie back home. That's the thing. We gotta take Winnie home." So they weren't holding her against her will. She wasn't their hostage. She says, "They're my friends." But except for that, he looked more than ever, so this is the man in the yellow suit after he's been cracked on the head, he's laying there, looked more than ever like a marionette. A marionette flung carelessly into a corner, arms and legs every which way midst tangled strings. So a marionette is like a puppet, kind of like a puppet, because there's There's sock puppets, but then a marionette is a little more like Pinocchio, is the puppet on strings. Is a puppet on strings, is this marionette. So imagine if you take one of these, it's moving its arms around, and you take these strings and you fling it to the side of the room. It's going to lay in a crumple, and it's going to be all in a jumble. That's the way she sees the man in the yellow suit. He's been whacked on the head. He crumples like a marionette. Now what does this mean when Tuck is looking at the man in the yellow suit? He's whacked on, he's laying there. Tuck's looking at him. If he were entranced and, yes, envious, like a starving man looking through a window at a banquet. That's, first of all, a simile. It's also a simile, the marionette thing earlier. That was a simile, like or as. So here, starving man staring through a window at a banquet. Now, what does this mean? Now, a starving man looking at the banquet is thinking, that looks so good, I wish I could have that. Tuck sees this dead man and is thinking, man, I wish I were able to die. Because this is just a reminder to him of something. Even just being hurt, being able to feel things like that, he can't feel that. He can't have that. He's fell off the wheel. Remember, Tuck isn't happy about this, being fallen off the wheel. So he sees this, and he's like, dang it. Now the constable says, telling you now, if he don't make it, you're in a pickle. Now, pickle. You've probably all heard this before. If somebody's in a pickle, it's like, they're in a tight spot. They got a problem. They got troubles. They're in a pickle. So he's saying if he doesn't make it, if he dies, then that means Mae Tuck is a murderer. And as he said, murderers are sent to the gallows, like I talked about earlier, a few chapters ago, where she'll be hanged. And Winnie says down here, the last line, Mae Tuck cannot be hanged. Because what happens if the whole crowd is there, if the whole town is turned out watching, and Mae Tuck walks up the steps, and they put her neck in the rope, and they pull the lever, and Mae Tuck falls, and she can't die. Secret's going to be out. It's going to be a big problem. Mae Tuck cannot be hanged. So we are in a pickle, aren't we? Because Mae Tuck cannot go to be hanged. Because they'll be found out. Cannot wait to see how we get out of this pickle. But that was the end of chapter 20. Come back next time for 21. You guys are all superheroes and magicians out there. All of you wild hooligans. You're real cool. Real cool cats and kittens, all of you. And thanks for sticking around. Catch you next time.